Bonjour à tous. Thank you for making it this early in the morning. I'm going to be doing this presentation in English, so please excuse my French. So let's start off with what this presentation is all going to be about. A wise man once said, if the weather wasn't changing as frequently as it did, then people wouldn't have conversation starters, and we wouldn't have as many babies in the world. I tend to agree with this gentleman. Today I'm going to be speaking about MeteoGroup's app, WeatherPro, how it serves relevant weather to the right users in its portfolio, keep growing its user base, and make sure satisfaction is at the highest, just so that it is the go-to-market app and at the top of the Play Store and the App Store. Oops. Technical problems. That's a nice start, right? Thank you. So, what's the agenda going to look like? Pun intended, I'm going to give you some very breezy introductions, explain why in the world I'm in the weather business. I'll introduce you to the hero, the protagonist of today's presentation, WeatherPro, tell you what's made it work along all these years, and I'll give you a few tips on how not to be an app zombie. Sorry, always happens to me when I'm in Paris. I get taken aback by all the beauty that I see. Nothing seems to work in my hands anymore. Merci. So, who's MeteoGroup? MeteoGroup is a leading weather service provider based in Western Europe, present globally across 17 countries, and one of the leading B2B weather solution services. We are also the official weather service provider to the BBC in the UK. We are publishers of a portfolio of apps, WeatherPro being the hero, but we have a couple of others, each of them uniquely satisfying niche user segments and making sure that we stay at the top of our line. Who am I? Like I mentioned before, my name is Varun. Coincidentally, Varun is the god of water and rain, according to Hindu mythology. And that's why sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I imagine that I look like this guy here. Unfortunately, when I look into the mirror, that's a different story. I grew up with constant sunshine at the south of India. Hopefully, some of you have actually been there. Otherwise, here's your chance to go after the presentation. But I am someone, I must admit, who never really took the weather too seriously. If I wanted to find out what the weather was like, I'd look out of my window. Best case scenario, I'd probably consult with the native application, which is already pre-installed on most devices. So what did turn my mind towards the weather and make me more serious about it? On a visit home last year, Chennai, where I'm from, happened to see the most amount of rainfall that was recorded in 100 years. Of course, weather presenters went on and on about it on TV. Most of us yawned or were busy eating popcorn or talking to the person next to us. We never knew what was coming. El Nino happened, Mexico gave us a little gift, and the entire city was inundated. Close to 500 people lost their lives that day. Most of us, including myself, were stuck at home for an entire week on end without any internet connection, with absolutely no way to access groceries, make telephone calls, nothing. Life came to a standstill, and Chennai took close to 4 months to recover and get back on her feet. So this is what really woke me up to the importance of weather in our day-to-day lives. I keep telling myself, if only people had an app that gave us the best and most accurate forecast of the amount of rainfall, of severe weather as it happens, maybe I could have taken my car and driven out of the city and not been stuck in my apartment without electricity for a week. So let me introduce you to WeatherPro. Of course, I love the internet. I love the fact that it gives us openness, connectedness. It gives a common layman the ability to actually be creative and create value-adding solutions that can impact people with change. WeatherPro has been at the top of its game since 2008. It's a paid application, which is supported by a family of other freemium apps. And this application has been #1 on the Play Store and App Store for quite a long time. It's present in target countries in Western Europe. So France, Germany, UK, Scandinavia, the Netherlands are our top priority. And within 1 year, you can see that we actually hit 3 million installs in 2008 to 2009. And that, back in the day, was an achievement. We have a daily active user base of at least 2 million users on any given time during the course of the year. And this can go up to 4 million in terms of monthly active users. Of course, I'm not here to heap praise on WeatherPro. I'm sure most of you are going to download the app and try it out anyway. But what I am going to do is share some of the lessons we learned along the way, which made this app the success in the paid weather vertical category that it is. So what are the portfolio of apps that I've been talking about? We have a very interesting strategy. We do operate in the premium space, apart from the paid apps. And it goes so. Alerts Pro. So this is an app that gives users severe weather warnings days in advance. And you also have the ability to actually put in your equilibrium on what causes severe weather in terms of a scale. Rain Today. This is an app that's based on nowcasting. So every time you want to go for a jog in the morning, this is the app that's going to give you a push notification once it understands what time you get up for that jog and let you know if it's going to be raining in the next 20 minutes and if you should or should not take a jacket with you. Meteo Earth. I like to call this app Google Earth on steroids. This is near real-time visualization of weather events as they happen across the world. It's based on high-end gaming technology as well as our broadcast tool, which we use for B2B services. And of course, we have a simplistic version of WeatherPro, which is WeatherPro Free. Don't be alarmed, the forecast quality is still very much the same. You still can choose between 2 million locations as your favorites, and you will get worldwide alerts as well as severe weather alerts. Of course, it's scaled down a little bit. Each of these apps, as you can probably figure out, serve unique segments of users across the weather vertical. And by giving them the quality and the use that they want, we make sure that we have a very high conversion rate from freemium to paid. So, in order to understand a product, one really needs to understand the end user. I always say that the end user has to be the heart of your product strategy, your growth marketing, as well as your roadmap and where you want your products to go. So what was it in 2008 for WeatherPro? For us, it was the prosumer. Some of you must have heard of Alvin Toffler. Back in the 1980s, he wrote a book called The Third Wave, where he explains the advent of a prosumer. Who is a prosumer? It's basically someone who not only consumes content, but also actively produces content while doing so. And of course, with the advent of Web 3.0, we have a websumer. A websumer is no one apart from all of us in this room. Basically, it's you and I. It's a person who actually tweaks the network and selectively chooses information to fuel his decision-making, and thereby also uses the channels that the network itself provides. Let me break it down for you and make it a little simpler. Say it's me at 7 p.m. tonight. I want to figure out where to have dinner tonight in Paris, and let's say I don't know the city at all. Of course, I'm going to open up Yelp on my phone, check the restaurant which has the best reviews, and if I like the food, I'll leave a review myself, thus leading maybe you tomorrow in the same area and location to go to the same restaurant and do the same. So this is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and for us, prosumers, we're like gold. If you have to make comparisons, prosumers are like the SLR cameras as opposed to point and shoot. And of course, now we have the websumers, and who knows what will come next. It's all the way up to infinity. Let's understand customers a little more. We all understand that we need to really be deep down into demographics. We need to have metadata sorted out. But we at MeteoGroup take a slightly different approach. We like to create personas. So by personas, I mean creating profiles of customers as a layer on top of your metadata, where you have the luxury of understanding more audience segments and interests. So a small example would be, for example, segments by interest and the personas there. You have weather control geeks, like myself as of today. Early tech adopters, smartwatch users, smart homeowners. By money spent, we have people who only want to use free apps and they don't mind the advertising. And of course, you have people who are more than willing to spend a few euros and make sure they get much more. This is the most interesting segment of personas, which would be by activity. Our users come from a plethora of backgrounds. You have people who want to barbecue over the weekend. You have windsurfers and kite surfers, sports enthusiasts, drivers of heavy-duty vehicles who want to figure out exactly if they are going to have severe weather along their route to their destination. And of course, you have small businesses who figure out their supply chain management based on the weather that they will see on a day-to-day basis. The weather vertical, just like hardcore gaming, has always been male audience heavy. But thankfully, over the course of time, We see this changing, and women are adding more and more to that portfolio. So what is it that any digital product needs to do? It needs to actually figure out a job that needs to be done and solve it, because the end objective of any app is to understand the value that it can add and solve a real-world problem. So some of the examples in terms of that for WeatherPro would be as below. I want to figure out what the weather is like for the weekend. I want to know where I can go as a destination which has lovely weather. Can I barbecue? Can I do more sports? What do I wear to work today? Do I take the bike or should I take public transport? You have plenty of use cases, and I'm sure all of you can identify yourselves with it. Being at the cusp of the digital age gives us a challenge as well as an opportunity. All of our digital products need to stay dynamic, which means the more you understand demographics and your consumer personas, your app and your digital products need to evolve along the way. So what is WeatherPro seen since 2008? As you can clearly see, there are huge improvements in UI and UX, and I'll tell you how we go ahead and do that. But bear in mind that all through the years, you need to have the look and feel supporting operating system guidelines for Apple and Google. These are, of course, the kingmakers in the app space. And unless you figure out how to keep them happy, you're not going to be featured. What makes us tick in terms of user-generated content? We ask interesting questions within our apps itself, just to figure out how good our forecasts are. Is it raining, like we predicted in Rain Today? Do you feel like it's actually 7 degrees or more? Of course, we need to take this with a pinch of salt, but there's a huge value generation because the core of our products is actually meteorology and forecasting, using big data analytics as well as information that we can pull from users' mobile phones, such as location, signal strength, app events, or even device sensors like NetAtmo devices. We can actually improve the core of our entire company, and B2C leads to a spillover into the B2B work that we do, not just in the app space, as well as across all other verticals. So the internal opportunity for us and for you is huge. Beta testing. I just had a conversation about this a little earlier before I got to the podium. I hope all of you are already doing it, because this is a known gaming strategy. And by opening up a closed beta before you launch a product or before you do any sort of a product release, you're creating viral loops. You're able to test against hypotheses of what your personas look like. First of all, it's free. It's given free of cost and easily available through the developer consoles. And it leads to very high user engagement. Make sure that you do a lot of A/B testing within your beta testing, just so that you arrive at a product that most people in your audience love. Of course, we have to bear in mind that not everyone can be kept happy, but that's not the point here. You grow and you learn along the way. Quicker than the competition, I must admit, we were one of the first weather apps out there in 2008. And of course, that gave us a huge advantage. But another mainstay of the digital age is figuring out the Internet of Things. Everyone gets super excited about chatbots, about artificial intelligence. But the one plea that I make to you is always figure out your technology roadmap on the basis of your business strategy. The objective is to reach new and existing audiences and maintain those relationships with Apple, Google, and other major players. But you have to figure out if it's something that your audiences will actually like, and it's not just something you need to do because it's come of age. Localization. The minute I say this word, most people think about language translation. And yes, you're right. It does include a huge part of it. All of us know the importance of ASO and how it gives us the maximum amount of organic reach. This involves graphics, metadata, text on the App Store product pages. Of course, but localization goes very well beyond that. It's deeply ingrained into cultural understanding, into traditions, into values and syntaxes of different users across various countries. A good example, and I apologize, it's in German. I wish I had a French version for you. A good exercise in WeatherPro itself would be the differences of users between Germany, the UK, and the Netherlands. And out here in a circle, I've outlined different kinds of weather data. Let me try and explain that a little more to you. You have factors such as temperature, the amount of sunshine during the day, when the sun rises and when the sun sets. So as you can see in Germany, people really want to know how many hours of sunlight there is, has a maximum and their biggest want. In England, they're more interested in weather news. In the Netherlands, they actually want to find out more about the temperature and cloud cover. And this is where you need to move your strategy from country to country and adapt along the way to make sure that you're hitting the parameters that people want. Localization, at least in terms of language, is easy to do once you figured out your product. You have API management for you to do unit conversions across various countries. And of course, user-generated content is something where you should allow native languages as well. The one important point that I can give you is that we need to integrate content as separate localized files, which are different from what your executable code is, and this way you can ship out faster and easier. Of course, we all realize the importance of push, and I'm sure most of us in the audience today figured out that some of the apps do get it wrong and lead to a high uninstall rate. This isn't something that any user would want from any app that they've just installed. You need to push right, and there are 3 various components which form the basis of a good push. It's timing, content, and relevance. Through your data, as well as your behavioral analytics, what you can find out with industry research is the right mix of all the 3 components and figuring out the sweet spot. So as you can see here, it would make sense to send weather news pushes at certain times of the day to users in the United Kingdom. If I am a user who wants to do a trek in the Himalayas and I've added it as a favorite in one of my applications, maybe that's something interesting to send out as a push. Localytics pulled out app verticals and their behavior across the course of the day. And I'm sure you can't really see it very clearly, but between 5 to 7 a.m. in the morning and 4 to 6 p.m. in the evening is when weather apps are used the most. So this is exactly when you need to be thinking about your push strategy. Smart handouts. I'm sure most of you have watched the YouTube movie that Leonardo DiCaprio put out there, the one that's called Before the Flood. Unfortunately, I can't afford to hire Leonardo DiCaprio as my influencer. But sometimes you just need to look at your own user base and you'll find gems that can be the voice of your branding and the voice of your product. This is a smart handout I did just last week in France, where someone got in touch with me who was a bicycle enthusiast, had a huge blog with a massive following, and was organizing a trip with all of his friends on bikes from the south of France to somewhere in the recesses of Belgium. It was just a basic choice for us as developers to make. Do we give that huge group of loyalists, biking enthusiasts, premium access for our apps for free? And will that work out for us? Once you do your due diligence, you figure out you have thousands of followers to gain from such an initiative. And that's exactly what we did. And now, hopefully, we have a lot of cycling enthusiasts in France who love our products and are willing to pay. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into the deep details of these slides. I know they're very, very wordy. All I wanted to do is thank Mr. Dave McClure for giving us the pirate metrics. You all are very well aware of acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. And I'm not going to waste too much time telling you how exactly this works. All I want to outline is how MeteoGroup seems to perceive each of these categories. Every business, in its right sense of mind, needs to figure out a weightage of various factors that go into these categories. For MeteoGroup, App Store optimization and app landing pages would be the most important. The very idea of growth marketing is to create a product which is self-fulfilling, something that markets itself by analyzing digital touchpoints within the app and figuring out the right tweaks to make it work and keep it going. So as you can see, I have everything from activation, retention, revenue, and referral. Bear in mind that your end user, when you first get him on board, or her on board, is like a first date. You need to give the right kind of sense of direction, lock in conversions, and convince him or her of a long-term relationship. And of course, always use the free tools given to you by Apple and Google. That may be referrals, be it through deep linking that you can actually go ahead and use the developer console to push numbers up in terms of organic reach. I think the weather is beautiful, and that's why people are willing to pay for it. Our revenue model, and of course this is something that all app developers want at the end of the day, is what really counts. So like I mentioned before, we have a bunch of freemium apps that satisfy users at niche levels, convince them to either buy our paid app for WeatherPro for forecasting, or go ahead and get a tiered subscription. By giving an umbrella subscription and opening up premium access to data, radars, forecasting, as well as interesting weather news across our portfolio of apps, we actually have a buy-in because of the organic reach, as well as the bang for the buck that we give the end user. I'd like to leave you with my friend Meteo Earth, because I think the weather is sublime, the weather is beautiful, and I think you really need to see it from his eyes. and I'm sure that you'll appreciate it as much as I do. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All the best, and all the best of weather for you. Thank you.